Okay guys, so I'm going to show off what I've been doing here with the all-wheel drive Civic stuff. So this is the jig that I've made. It's not the best, but it was just made with some stuff I had laying around. So I got the mount made up here, the mount made down there, and then the mount made over here for the front. And once I got the arm located in space here and leveled, then I was able to make this guy here. And this is a removable fixture that holds this the brake rotor and hub, and it just bolts up onto the factory holes here that are in the threaded holes that are in the brake rotors. Squares up with the studs, and then just two studs to mount it on. And that gives me the location for this bolt-on style Honda Insight hub that's in here. This needs to be trimmed up. This is just kind of preliminary right now. I need to shave a little bit around here and there just to get this to sit more square in there. It won't take much. It'll still be a pretty tight fit. And then I'll trim this back, to about 4.5 inches or so, and it should look pretty good weld up in there. This spot here, this guy here, is for locating the caliper. So eventually I'll build my my tangs off the side here, the ears for the caliper off the pipe. You can see over here you can see where it's still bolted up to the factory. It's flat up against the back of the factory bracket, which obviously you have to remove. So that's what that guy is there. So once you get a jig made, you'll remove this backing plate. You'll remove the factory spindle and cast piece that the spindle's on. There's a couple different kits on the market. A lot of people do the DIY setup like this, like how I'm doing. And that's where I learned how to do this. I just saw some other people in the group, on the Facebook pages that have done something very similar. So I figured, I can do that, whatever. I come to find out later that the Hub City performance arms are very similar in the way that they're constructed, and they just give you different options for bushings, and obviously it's all powder coated and pretty looking, ready to go. What I did like about this design and the Hub City style design versus like S1 is that this pipe that is mounting the hub to is incorporating not only the front piece of sheet metal here, but boxing it in with also the rear piece of sheet metal here, just like the factory spindle would have been done. See, the factory spindle bolts onto the front sheet metal here, and then has this part that goes through the rear sheet metal with a nut on it that ties that in and boxes it in. If you don't have the front sheet metal and the rear sheet metal tied together, then you have the potential for the spindle or hub to bend and move and deflect with any sort of really heavy loads. So I'm not a fan of that. As much as I like the simplicity of the S1 kit, I'm a little skeptical of that. The rest of their stuff looks fine to me. I haven't really noticed anything that I particularly thought was a bit of a red flag. Evidently they're having luck with it regardless. I just like this design better. Furthermore, what I do like about the S1 kit over the Hub City kit is that the S1 kit has their setup has a plate that goes over the entire back of that, which boxes in the entire arm. That is where I think the Hub City kit is kind of lacking. And the reason why I say that is because you look at just about any other all-wheel drive car in the market, like a DSM or anything, and they have box style, sheet metal trailing arms. They're not open like that. Obviously, a Honda trailing arm was just along for the ride. It was never meant to see any sort of substantial longitudinal force. But I think that there's room for improvement there. So my plan is to do a combination of the two. I'm going to have this style, the more DIY style arm that people have done. But then I'm going to put some sheet metal across the back of this, probably 083, and box all that in, just because I think it could probably use the strength in an all-wheel drive application, if it's seeing any sort of substantial power anyway. And obviously the road course guys will like that too, because it makes the arm a little more rigid. But anyway, that's the plan. Drilling out this 5-inch hole, I did it with a 5-inch hole saw, which is an absolute nightmare, by the way. You know, I think I ripped off quite a few of the teeth trying to get this to work, because it's just so much vibration. But yeah, I mean, here's the end result. You know, this piece here. I had this hardened steel. I don't even know what it is. It's like a bearing race or something, but it's about 1 inch long. It's a hardened steel piece, and it perfectly fit this. It's perfectly piloted. That drill bit. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more precise fit unless I made it myself. I'd say that's a few thousand, maybe like a 4,000 slip fit. I just was lucky enough to randomly have a bushing from an ST300 control arm that perfectly press fit into that hole. And then I just centered it with a couple sockets that I shoved some latex gloves in to tighten it up, and it made it for a really tight fit. But anyway, that's what I used to cut that out, and then I just flipped the whole shebang around and did it on the opposite side in a kind of a similar manner. Wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. I'm going to look for a more perfect way to do that in the future. But anyway, that's where we're at. We got the left and right, and you know, once I get that wrapped up, I should have some all-wheel drive trailing arms on my Civic. The Civic I'm working on is an EK silver hatchback, DX model. It's going to be a B series setup. Just again, because that's the stuff I have laying around, so I figured, screw it, I might as well do it that way. The car's not going to be incredibly fast. We're only looking at maybe 450 horsepower is all we're really shooting for. It's going to be a full street car. The AC and interior, power steering, the works. So I went ahead and decided to go just with a CRV diff. I'm going to pin it because I don't trust the clutch system at all. I think that's probably just a miserable idea as far as getting any kind of power to the rear. I went with the Nipco 1310 U-joint. That is just a bolt-on deal. It just goes right on. I couldn't ask for a better fit. It's piloted perfect. The holes are perfect. Nothing needs to be modified at all. It just goes right on. It works the way it should be. It does need a little bit longer bolts than the factory CRV bolts that I'm showing here, but that's no big deal. Trip to the hardware store. Uses a 1310 Mustang style U-joint. Let's see, go over here. I got the Land Rover Freelander viscous coupler here. Mine needs the carrier bearings rebuilt. They're trash. But I'm going to use the adapter that a couple of the guys offer on the all-wheel drive pages, that just, you know, this factory slip joint for the Freelander can be reused and just adapted with a spacer here to the Honda transfer case. So that's simple enough. They make an adapter for the rear section also, but I figured since I already have to cut this anyway, that doesn't make much sense to me. I already have to cut the rear anyway, so when I cut this, you know, however short I got to cut it, I'll just get a weld yoke that just press fits into the tube and is made to accept a 1310 Mustang U-joint. So then it'll just bolt right onto my Nipco flange that I have on that rear end. Other than that, I got the first gen all-wheel drive CRV transmission. I still have to pick that up. I had a buddy pull it out of the junkyard for me. But this stuff can be done for cheap. You don't have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to do this stuff if you have a little bit of fab ability and you're resourceful. I got this rear end for $45 from a pick and pull style junkyard. that drive shaft I got for $45, also from the same salvage yard. Let's see. The CRV axles for the rear, I grabbed 2 short ones. I think they were $15 each out of Pick and Pull. I was lucky on this though. The front wheel drive Insight hubs from a first gen Insight. I can't believe it, but there was actually an Insight at that salvage yard, so I was able to get those for like 10 or 15 bucks a piece. The transmission was a tricky one. They're hard to find, so they are worth a decent amount just because of their rarity. If I had it here, I'd show you, but those transmissions are, you know, manual trans out of a first gen CRV. The vast majority of them were automatics. So that was a bit of a trick. I had to do some online searching of some salvage yard inventories. I was lucky enough that I found one at a Pick and Pull in Columbus, Ohio, and I have a friend that lives in Columbus, so he went out there to get it for me, and lucky me, it was Labor Day weekend, 50% off. So I got the transmission, the T-bracket, the side bracket, the mounts, the axle cups I left in it, the starter, the slave cylinder lines. I mean, like everything I would need, bolts and everything, for like $110. So yeah, a pretty lucky deal on that. But I would expect that you're probably going to spend $600 or $700 to get one of those transmissions off the internet from someone else. But yeah, I mean, if you look around, you'll find them. The CRVs were plentiful, so just finding a manual one will pop up eventually. You just got to be patient. But anyhow, that's it for now. Once I get this a little bit more forward, I will make another video and show you guys that. But right now, I'm going to make a plate, probably 3/16 thick, that goes in front of here, that'll weld to it, that will have, you know, that bolt pattern. So I got to give a hub to a friend of mine, and he's going to draft it out for me. And they have a CNC. He's a school teacher, does auto mechanic course up at the school, and they have a CNC plasma table up there. So he's going to cut it out for me. We're going to try that first. Then later on, I can water jet them or whatever. Don't really plan on making a business out of doing these. I didn't really want to. I just wanted to make some for my own car, but you know, if someone wants to offer some money to have one done here and there or whatever, you know, I can certainly do it. But anyway, there it is. Oh, one last thing. So I guess there's a lot of kind of turmoil in the different groups about people talking about how it should be done for the clearance for the shock. Well, what Hub City does is they use their own control arm here that's essentially offset, the beam's offset in the bushings to push the bushing back for the shock so it can lean the shock back a little. Certainly works. It's been proven. Changes the geometry a touch. Probably not a big deal at all. Is there a better way? I don't know. The S1 kit, they do relocation brackets. They have that kind of offset H style bracket that they use. A lot of people are very skeptical of that. They think it'll break, fatigue, under load, whatever. I don't know. It looks pretty good to me. There are factory cars that have very similar setups. There's this billet aluminum with like a stainless additional support along the side. Most of the stuff I've seen them do, it looks like they do FEA analysis on the computer, so it's probably pretty durable. I would maybe worry a little bit about fatigue over a very long time because of it being aluminum, but you know, only time will tell on that. The cheapskate DIY option though is to try to do this, right? So this is just another front shock with a front fork, and as you can see, I mean that fits in there pretty damn good. So that's certainly a possibility. I think I haven't got to try it yet because I don't have the lower control arm mounted, but I don't see why that couldn't work. And if it pushes the car's ride height up too much or whatever, I mean, you can just use a top hat, to get it back down. So I don't see why that's not a reasonable option. I mean, I guess it sucks for someone who already has coilovers or whatever, but sometimes you got to make sacrifices, I guess, if you want to do shit cheap, right? So anyway, I was lucky enough that I just randomly have another set of Coney shocks here and Eyebox springs from another car, so I'll make it work. But I'll give you guys some pictures of that once I get closer and get a control arm on there and show you how it clears the axle and everything. So anyway, until next time, that's where we're at. So if you guys have any questions or whatever, just ask me.